remember, perhaps if you've been watching any of these videos, that why did all the engine have to come out? It's because reverse gear was detached internally. And if you watched a few days ago, you will also seen that the engine now works again. That's good. So now the obvious thing to do is to put the two things together and see if I can reverse the car. Now, again, I'm doing this live and in one take. It's one take for now anyway. Let's see what happens later. Well now, I did say it was in one take, and that didn't work. Some investigation is needed. And so, after some investigation, and you can perhaps see the back wheels are off the ground, so I have in the meantime checked whether I can actually get gears and so on. All except fifth and reverse. Just like before, I had the whole issue with the reverse gear. Oh, poo. So I've done something wrong, and I'm going to have to look into what? I have looked into it. I have found another channel, Car Passion channel I think it's called, where they had the exact same gearbox, interestingly, on an MX-5. Exactly the same problem. They showed exactly how to put it back together again, and I exactly know that I didn't do that. Oh bum. So, it's all going to have to come out again, just like before. Perhaps I'll get better at it. That's the only upside. So I've got to take the engine and gearbox out again. Well, that's the radiator draining. Luckily it was only lukewarm. Okay, so that is most of the cooling system off. We get this ice cream van that comes round. It's been playing the same tune for years. Right, I'm now about an hour in. I've detached a lot of things. Still quite a few things to go. So I've now got my lifting straps attached to the engine, and I've got my chain hoist attached to the beams in the roof of the garage, like I've done several times before. So now I'm lifting. I turned you off for a minute there. Oh, I forgot you weren't on. Anyway, it's I think we can now say out. Now it can come down and we can look at the offending fifth and reversed counter lever. And there we are.
Well, we know, we saw you could get that inexpressive high with incredibly low prices. With up to
So,
60% off.
being Japanese, there's a good chance that these are 12mm. I'll bring you back. The battery's getting a bit flat, so I need to economise slightly. Yep. All, well, I guess they're M8, but they've got 12mm heads on. And that's the end plate. That came off pretty straightforwardly. There's also this funny one. I remember has to come out. These. These are in fact the, I'm going to call it a bell housing, even though arguably it isn't. I think I need a woggle. Oh, I know. I've got to take the circlips. Now these circlips are not ones with kind of loops in the end. So these circlip pliers aren't really the right sort, but I managed to make them do last time. So I'm hopeful that I can do that again. There we go. So I prized it apart, the end of the circlip, enough so I could get my screwdriver in. This one seems to be more difficult because the circlip pliers are actually too big. See if I can use a pair of ordinary pliers, pointy nose ones. Yeah. I've got my screwdriver inserted. I just need a little bit more. And of course it let go. Right, try again. I'll come back when it's done. Okay, they're both off now. The second one was a lot fiddlier. But anyway, did it. Right, I'm going to turn this round now. Because I anticipate that the rogue lever is going to fall out shortly. It should be in there. And there should now be nothing holding the two halves together. Mind you, it would help. Well, is there anything attached to it? That's the question. In actual fact, I think if you were separating this, you would have to take this out. Anyway, and the fact it's come this far means that it's in the wrong place. Now I've got to do this quickly because there's hardly any battery left in you, but and there it goes. Not that I ever had any doubt. The reverse and fifth gear interlock, which I knew was the problem. Should have been in here, but it seems it should have been in like that rather than as I had it, with the pin which is in here, rather than as I had it, stick it on there, push it in and hope for the best. So that's what I did, because I didn't know how it was meant to work, and I hadn't looked at the drawings that I've got properly. Not helped by the fact the drawings show this, but from the other side. But anyway, I just now need to see if I can, as I say, put that on there, take this out, put that on, and then put this back, and that is the challenge. Now the most difficult part of this reverse get interlock thing is holding it in place while you put the bell housing on, so you can get the pin in. So at the moment I'm trying a piece of cotton threaded around the top of this a couple of times over the top of the fork, whatever you call this piece. So it's coming up round the back of the lever, and I tied it in a knot. And the idea is that if I can manage to get it through, then I can cut the thread and we should be tickety-boo. We'll see if that works. So here is my thread. Here is the hole that the pin goes into. I don't know if you can see down the bottom of the hole there. That is actually the lever. So where is the pin? This is the pin or pivot, which luckily has some chamfered edges on it. And the question is, can I get that to go in there? Yes, there'll be some looseness about that at the moment. Let's see if I can just slightly move it with this Allen key. No, it doesn't want to move backwards. Okay. Right, using some thread to hold the lever in place. Complete failure. It doesn't hold it in firmly enough. And in actual fact, there are two places that need to be held, and the thread was only capable of fixing it in there. So it does make you wonder, how did Mazda actually assemble this thing to begin with? I've actually used some tissue paper, which you can see wedged in here and in here, and I believe this is not an engine. This hasn't got an oil pump. A bit of floating around paper shouldn't make any difference really, I hope. Anyway, I'm going to try it that way. And the challenge is putting it together in one go. well, not in one go, in one putting it together so the lever stays in place. Still there? No, it's not. Even that slight movement has dislodged the top end, and it's now fallen off. Right, this is driving me up the wall actually, because I alternate between the thing falling off and not being able to get the bell housing on. So I've moved on from paper and now I'm using hot glue. Let's see if that certainly fixes it in place. But the thing is, can I get the bell housing on? Which seemed to be a problem. Now it is actually liable to catch the lever with the edge of the bell housing itself. Yeah, it is still in place. I'll tighten those two up, I'm sure that's enough. Right, so, like I said, start to put it in reverse. A little bit. Right, I'm actually going to loosen these off. Just doesn't want to go in there neatly. I think it's in. Can you see it's moving? It's not moving in the way you would expect. It feels like it's pivoting on something further in, which is probably the arm, the lever. So it'll just right, I'm going, as I think maybe you can see, a little bit at a time. It is going in. The thing is it doing anything, or has it fallen off? Right. Let's see if I can actually change gear with it. I mean, it sounded promising. Yes! It's working! So next day, and unfortunately we're still not out of the woods, because although reverse works, if you watch my grips here, which are fixed to the tail shaft, when I turn the input shaft, as you can see, reverse is indeed going round the opposite way. So I'm turning the input shaft this away and the output shaft is going that away. However, that's fifth, that's reverse, but if I go to the other gear, which is affected by this counter lever, which is fifth, and do the same thing, you get this rather nasty noise, which to me sounds rather like it's not in gear properly. Oh dear. So yeah, we're going to have to take it apart again, I think. I'll just demonstrate that again. So this is my mechanism moving the gear shift forward, because the engine is so far back in the car, and I'm sure it's not responsible for the problems I'm having, as I can show you. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, which sounds quite good, sixth, and reverse. Notice how positive that reverse sounds. Let's do that again. That's interesting. Makes a different noise if you've been in a forward gear. Anyway, if I turn the gearbox, and it's always in this direction because that's the way the engine goes, and this one, reverse, goes the opposite direction. But the other gears can be a bit deceptive, because the internal drag of the gearbox can mislead you into what's working and what isn't. So that's first gear. I think I can see it's going around more slowly than my hand is going, if you like. Second gear. Third gear. And I'm just putting some drag on it. Yeah, it's definitely going around. Fourth gear. That feels... It's hard to say what the ratio is. I probably could look it up. You can't really see how much I'm turning my hand. That does appear to be pretty much 1-to-1 though. Fifth gear is the one I'm having trouble with. It's going round, but it's making that bloody awful noise. In fact, it's not being driven round, because I can hold the output shaft stationary, and that's what I'm talking about, the internal friction can make it misleading. Sixth. Yeah, and I can see that the tail shaft is going around actually more quickly, so it is indeed overdriven. And then, as we saw, that's that positive noise again, and this is reverse, and it is indeed going the opposite way around. So that's the only one I'm having trouble with is fifth. Yeah, so I took the plug out just now, put it back in again. As I said, there was no falling down noises. I've put it back in again, and now I can go through the gears, and it does look like reverse at least still does work. So yes, it does look rather as if taking the plug out is not on its own, as it were, fatal. It's moving around the gears afterwards that's the problem. Just check that fifth still isn't working, I suppose. Are we still getting horrible noises? No. Yes. That's just no good, is it? Having released all the fixing bolts through there, and just experimentally leaving the plug in, and there's another bolt round here which is said to need to come out. I'm just going to see what happens if I take the front off without taking those off. Does it come off or not? It's looking like, yes, probably it doesn't come off. That's certainly more stuck than it was previously. Okay, so I will take the plug off. Comfortable. Let's take this one off on this side then. See how much difference that makes. Yeah, it's definitely moving on this side, but not so much. No, I think, I don't know. It looks like it's sticking now. Let's see how comfortable it now feels. Uncertain about that. Yeah, that definitely moved a bit when I unscrewed it. So it's no longer fixed on. So presumably now it will come right off. Yeah, there it goes. Well, the first thing I can see is that my counterlever is actually still in place, and it's still got the hot glue that I put in. It's still holding it in place, although obviously hot glue being what it is, it's not terribly firm. I'm not worried about this stuff getting in the gearbox itself, because it's, in the end, it's kind of soft plastic. So anyway, that's now off. Now let's see what we can discover about fifth gear. So what does fifth gear try to do? That's the question. Okay. So it looks like this is indeed fifth gear select. Oh no, it can't be. So as because there's normally a pivot just here, so as I pull into fifth gear, that pulls back, which causes the top end presumably to go forward. But does this move? Aha. It could be that's exactly what it's meant to do. I've got a bolt ring there. That doesn't look good, that looks loose. The brassy thing just there. Could this be my problem? This brassy thing I'm sure wasn't as loose as that before. So, what does that mean? Don't know. Is the whole of this gear too far? It's got a circlet round it, so I can't move that way. Don't know. So this is the problem area which I'm getting at the moment. And did I film this a minute ago? So I called it a bulk ring. No, it's a synchro ring, which clearly ought not to be as loose as that. However, it's not in gear. But what is more, so the teeth, the little teeth on this side line up with the little teeth on that side. But as well as that, there's these, what you might call big teeth, that actually line up to the inside. Now I'm not sure what you call this. It's like a hollow hollow ring with teeth on the inside. But the thing I've just noticed is that, because this is the input shaft, is that it's loose. Well, it's loose contained by the front cover. So if I push it back in, which I did a minute ago, there we go. And now the synchro ring, sorry, keeps, yeah, I was right the second time. The synchro ring is no longer flapping around loose. So what I'm hoping is the case, because it was kind of jammed up when I put the front cover on. I couldn't turn it with my hand very well, hardly at all. So what I'm hoping is that it could be as simple as this gear was out of position. As I put the front on, it squished it into an, if you like, an unnatural position, such as that. So now I can't push it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back until it does go in. There we are. And now, hopefully, everything's tickety-boo, as long as I can again get the counter lever into position. So, to summarise, I couldn't get fifth gear. I'm not sure this is fifth or sixth, but it's associated with this shift arm, which is associated in turn with the counter lever. So this is part of the mechanism which the counter lever grips, if you like, and pushes this gear outwards, or goes back the other way to do reverse. So clearly, whichever gear this is, and by a process of kind of eliminate, this must be fifth. I'm going to go back at my drawing in a minute. But anyway, what I'm hoping is that by ensuring that this gear is not in, if you like, a weird position like that, as long as that's in position as it should be, when I put the front on, it won't be sort of crushing the gears wrongly back that way, and therefore everything should be fine. And I will still use the hot melt glue approach to keeping the counter lever bolt, fitting the counter lever in place while I fit the front. I hope you understood all that. It's quite complicated. Right, so I'm going to do this again. I'll put some glue in there, some glue in there. quickly before it cools off. And we'll see how that works. Right, that's fixed in place fairly firmly. I hope it's not too firmly, actually. There's one thing that's not entirely 100% clear, is how far forward or back should each of these parts of the pivot be fixed in. How far is their natural position? And that could force the centre to be slightly out of line. Well, unlikely that way, but this way is possible. Yeah, still it's no different to the problem I had before. So let's try putting the front back on. The gearbox is in neutral. And let's see. Right, this went on. Let's just check the fork's still in place. And no, the answer is no, it's not still in place. So the problem I get is that the front face of the selector is interfering with the back face of the casing. So this is partially answering my question mark about where exactly should that go. So I'm going to do that again. And I can push it more inwards this time. So let's put some glue in there, glue in there, and I need to put it as inward as much as possible. That will have the effect of making this face further in and therefore hopefully not catch on the gearbox casing. So I've just done that again with the top part, the fork pivot more that way than it was a moment ago, so that this face of the pivot is now more inward and therefore further away from the gearbox casing coming in that way. So I'll say more in the way, I mean less in the way. Right, let's see if I can get the front on this time. Right, let's have a look. Yep, the counter shaft, what's it called? Lever is still in place. Bit of a fiddle to get this on. So I'll just put a couple of these bolts back in. Put ones opposite each other. Okay. Now the question is, can I get the shaft? So I get my light again. Yeah, I can see the shaft through this hole. I keep calling it a shaft, a lever through this hole. So I'm going to adopt the method, because the hot glue is kind of soft. I'm just going to do that thing. If it becomes stiff, back it off, take it out. Seems fairly... Right, that's definitely in. Let's see, even with no other bolts on, probably that's enough. It says probably. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Let's see if reverse is a thing. Aha! Let's just see if my methodology of detecting reverse working is actually looking for this to be rotating that away while I'm turning the gearbox input shaft the opposite direction. Yes! Okay, and the opposite problem being fifth. Does it make horrible noises? No, it doesn't. Oh. Or does it? Alright, so what happened, because it wasn't like that to start with, but what I have just noticed is that this is way forward. So I reckon it's become out of position as a result of me turning it without the front plate on. So it looks to me that's the thing that you mustn't do. This will cause that bearing. In fact, it might be possible to knock it back without taking the front off again. Let's try to go back to neutral. Otherwise I may well have to do that again. Oh, did you see that? It went into place. Interesting. So as I tapped it just now with the mallet handle, this race here went into position, or it flipped back. So maybe I should quickly just experimentally put that on. Okay, so if my theory is correct, that should hold the gear in place. Is it? And unlike previously when I did that, I can turn this with my fingers. So let's just try that again. Yeah, reverse is reversing. Fifth. Yes! And fifth is not making that horrible noise. So that's my hypothesis done with, I think, or done with, agreed with. So you must put this plate back on, because even if the thing wasn't out of position before you started, it will then naturally become out of position, and that's when you get fifth gear slippage and that horrible noise, because the input shaft has been allowed to slip forwards. Well, 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 you learn something new almost every day. Right, so having proven that, I now need to take this thing off. Oh, and fit the, I'm going to call them snap rings rather than circlips. Not sure how much of a difference there could be, but anyway, there they are. So it would appear that the function of this snap rings is to prevent the bearing being pushed into the casing, I think. Anyway, let's set about getting, oh, no, that's okay, getting the snap ring into place. Yeah, I can do it without using circlip. Well, maybe that one's a little bit easier. Okay, so push that back in. And get the end casing, or whatever you call that thing, plate. Let's put some, I don't know whether gloves are going to be necessary again. Yes, it does say for bathrooms, but it's the same stuff. You can tell by the smell. If it's silicone sealant, this is it. And I've got that already. Right, so let's put that on there. Put a couple of bolts in. Our first test is going to be, can I turn the input shaft by hand? Yes. And yesterday I couldn't. And when I took the plate off, when I took the end plate off, I found that I could. I assumed that because there's this collar coming up here, that it was actually because I had a better grip on it. But I now think that the end bearing was squishing everything in the wrong direction. So anyway, that's still 5th gear actually. Just check it's actually in gear. Yeah, there's definitely, that's not just transmission drag in there. If I put it into neutral, it'll probably still go round. Yeah, but now I can quite easily turn it. And 5th, which was the crucial one from the beginning. Now we're looking for this one to be going round this way. Yes, there it is. So I think that's it, chaps. I've now fixed it, so I'll just need to put the other bolts back in. So check everything. So this is neutral, but if I hold on to the end of it, it slips. Then we've got all the gears. First, yeah, that's demonstrably going slower than the input shaft. I'm going to have to check they're all in gear though. Is there any slip? No. That's first. Second. Yep. Third. Yep. Fourth. Fifth. And no funny noises. Sixth. Yeah, you can actually see that's going faster than the input shaft. And finally, reverse. And yes, thank heavens for that. So in summary, if you take this, well, it looks like a plug, but it's not. If you take the shaft out, you're in for a world of pain, but you can resolve it. It is a threaded, the top part of it is a threaded piece, and there's a long shaft, it's about that long, and that has a pivoting on it, the reverse gear, 5th gear counterlever, which swivels around it like that. That's what the function of this piece is. The reason it's so difficult to get at, they start with the bell housing. They mount the thing on its end actually. They put the gears, the naked gears, without the casing on from the top, which is the side in this view. They put the cantilever in, they put it in around the side while that's happening, and then afterwards the outside casings are put over the gears, so they never have to do what I have been doing. And that's basically, it's not designed to be reassembled that way. And if you were taking it to a Mazda specialist or anything like that, then I imagine they would probably just dismantle the whole gearbox and reassemble it. But so doing it this way with the hot glue, which I did, is kind of cheating in a good way. And then the secondary problem I had with the funny business with the gears is because I had incorrectly assembled the front cover inside here that enabled the front input shaft basically to stray forwards out of position, which meant that the synchronizer hub wasn't properly engaged. In fact, having looked at the manual, which I did a minute ago, it actually specifically warns about doing that, which was a bit of annoying. I didn't know beforehand. I hope no damage has been done to synchronizer itself, but it looked alright, so I'm fairly confident. So all that remains now is to stick it back in the car. So here we have the AJ30 Jaguar engine connected to the RX8 gearbox, and there it is. I didn't bother showing you how I did that. There are in fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts attaching the two things together. Doesn't seem to be anywhere else for another one. So that's that then. So here we are, and I've hoisted it up into the air using my chain hoist, which is hanging from the roof truss of my garage, which is up there. There's actually a steel tube running between two roof trusses. Ignore anything else you can see up there. Yeah, I've done this a number of times. So what I need to do now, and I didn't film this last time, what I need to do now is push the car forward so I can get it into the engine bay. And one thing that I did differently from last time when I took it out, because this is a piece of seatbelt webbing that goes onto the big hook up there, and last time I hooked it over this way and doubled round over this way, which meant that the hook had to be 90 degrees different from what it is now. Are you seeing this? Yes. I've changed it back to how I used to do it actually, so the loop goes round the hook down, up, round the hook down, and joins up down there. And the advantage of doing that, I hope, is that I can actually get the thing to slide over, which will help it go in basically. So anyway, I don't want to do that now because I need to get it over the front of the car. So let's see if I can push the car forward. That is harder work than you would have thought, because there's a little step just down there. Anyway, the wheels are now over that. Another thing that happens, it's surprisingly easy for the car to go sideways because of the dollies. Right. Whew. So, the tail of the gearbox is now over the front of the car, so I can stop lowering. Right, so I now need to make it slide like I said before. What I'm trying to do is to get the webbing strap to slide over the hook. And as it does so, the engine will increasingly dive down. That's the idea. It's just gone past the front of the tunnel. Right, I now need the back end of it to come up a bit, I think. Right, the furthest most part of the engine block, which is the fan belt tensioner, has just crossed over the front of the chassis. So it should go down. Oh yes, and gradually it goes in. What I haven't filmed is the lengthy process of getting the engine mountings mounted, the engine basically into the engine bay again, because that took a very long time. And one thing I will say, if I have to take the engine out again, heaven forbid, I do need to alter my engine mountings, because the problem I have with the mounting rubbers with a screw or bolt that goes right through the middle is that you need to take the bracket which is attached to the engine and hook it over, up and over, to get the hole lined up, and it really needs to become a kind of fork thing so it doesn't have to go up and then over. But I'm not going to take the engine out especially to redo that, so it'll have to be what it is. Right, so the next thing I'm going to do is to refit the gear linkage, and I will then obviously check that the gear change is working as far as I can tell. So I'll quickly do that. Okay, so I put the gear lever, gear change back in, which all seems fine, and I've also got the back wheels off the ground, and the reason I have done that is so that I could fit the prop shaft. So prop shaft, drive shaft I think if you're American, the big spinny thing that connects the engine and gearbox to the back axle, that thing, we call it a prop shaft. Anyway, so that is on, and with the assistance, because I didn't want to keep jacking the car up and down, with the assistance of one of my neighbours, was I wanted to check that the connection to the gearbox was and the engine was good, because of course if I do this, because it's not an LSD, an open diff, the opposite wheel will spin. So anyway, I did this with my neighbour holding the other wheel still, just to make sure that doesn't happen, and then by doing that it turns, or tries to turn, the engine if it's all connected, and it did. So let's all hope for the best there. So my next thing is going to have to be put the exhaust back on, and we'll move on from there. Starting with my X-pipe. Well, this is the X itself, and these two front pipes, can you see those? Yeah, two front pipes go onto the two parts of the exhaust manifold, left and right. Now I do wonder whether there's a difference in length, whether that matters, especially with the X further back. And I honestly don't know. It is possible the difference in length, which is that much, may be important, maybe it isn't. But anyway, this is how it is for the moment. So we'll make the best of that and find out later on. We can always improve things later, but first of all we need to get it working in a basic kind of way. Right, let's see if I can lift up the exhaust system. Maybe, maybe not. Right, a bit of mallet action. That didn't work then. Well, that was a struggle, but the exhaust is on. I didn't bore you with much of it, to be honest with you, but it is on. And move on from there. So I'm starting to connect up a few electrical things, and I might put the radiator back in a minute. I do know that I've got to connect up still some bits under the car, unfortunately, but yeah, one thing at a time. Now I'm going under the car to connect up the starter motor. It's a lot of work, this engine out business. Now, a moment ago I thought I was filming, but turns out I wasn't, so I can just tell you that I did start the engine. Brilliant, and it started just as quickly as last time, so that's really good. But even though I've proven also that the gearbox is in gear by putting it in whichever gears, especially fifth and reverse, to see if it's by rocking the car backwards and forwards, or I could rock the engine, so that works, but I've got no clutch pedal. Now, I've had a quick look underneath and there's a puddle, so I'm thinking that I didn't attach the pedal to the clutch release arm properly. That's what I hope anyway. So a considerable amount of effort has been expended since the last bit of this video. Basically, best part of a day work. I didn't want to take the engine out, obviously, which I could have done. I've managed to get hold of the mounting for the clutch slave cylinder, which is right down the back of the engine. It wasn't easy. I had to reconfigure some of the pipe work so that it wasn't so difficult another time. But hopefully now it's done. This is why the bonnet's not on the car. So if all goes well and the car does move, then I can potentially move it backwards, which is kind of the whole point here. I'm just going to switch the battery on. Just hold on a second. Okay, that's my battery isolator switch. it goes backwards. That won't be helping. Yeah, that smells quite good. Yeah, that wasn't more manifold. Thank heavens for that. So that's kind of it really. The engine's running, the 6-speed gearbox is running, it's been running, the engine's been running, I mean, for a long time before. Today only a minute or two, but at this moment I've no reason to suppose that I have any further mechanical problems until of course I take it out. That will be the next excitement. In the meantime though, brittle. If you got as far as this, thanks very much for watching. And in case you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. That would be really encouraging for me. So catch you on the next one. Of course, prior to taking the car out on the actual road, because I'm putting it off to be honest, but prior to doing that anyway, I thought just do some sensible tests, leave it running for a bit, see what the cooling's like, blah blah blah. But one of the things that some people have probably wondered about, one of those being the Cotswold engineer. Hello! Hello Cotswold engineer, is the funny, well, rattling noise that has been happening every time I switch the ignition on. And normally, because I've got the same system on another car, that's a sign that the fuel is very low. So I've just topped it up. So hopefully this will be better. Yeah, it is a fuel pump, but it no longer sounds like a machine gun. So hopefully everything will be fine for a little test run in the not too distant future. It's been a long time getting to this point.